Hello there, I'm Nathalia Melo, your Unfiltered Fit BFF, mom of two turned CEO of a fitness empire. Someone who truly understands the struggles of trying to stay fit, sane, and sexy, all while juggling work, life, and motherhood. And this is the Unfiltered Fit Life podcast. Follow along wherever you're listening and join me weekly as I help busy working moms just like you simplify your fitness journey so you can lose fat, regain your confidence, and feel sexy AF. It's time to stop living in the what ifs and hiding from the cameras. It's time to regain control over your body, feel sexy naked, and wear a bikini confidently. People already see you as a super confident woman, but it's time for you to feel the same way too. Come on, let's go. Hello there, fam. Welcome to another episode of the Unfiltered Fit Life podcast. I'm Nathalia Melo, your host. And today I have a very awesome guest that I kept on running into her everywhere that we went. I would get there and I was like, oh, hi. And it wasn't until this recent last event that we really got chatting. And I was like, yep, she's my person. And as we started to chat, Ali told me a little bit more about what she does. And she is a fitness expert and leading advocate for men's health. She's known as the queen of men's health. However, whenever she booked this podcast, she put the boner queen, and I just about died 50 times. Anyway, she combines her exercise science and coaching background with deep hormone optimization expertise, and she's also helped thousands of men achieve better health, performance, and confidence by addressing the root cause of hormonal imbalance with an evidence-based, no BS approach. Ali, welcome.
Thank you. That was quite the introduction. Was that a bio you found on the internet or?
I kind of mixed and match.
Oh, I like it. I might steal that.
Yeah, I went here and then I was like, okay, I like this. No, I don't like this. And then I just start putting things together because I normally listen to podcasts that my guests have been on.
Yeah.
So I make sure that I try to ask some questions that are a bit different. So you're not answering the same thing over and over again.
I love that because I do answer a lot of the same ones. And then I always forget whose podcast I told what story or joke on. And then I'm just like, I don't fucking remember. So I'll just tell the same story and then.
I have a Rolodex of like stories. You know how people have a Rolodex of stories. And sometimes I don't know if I've said the same story. So I hear you on that. And it's cool because Ali and I, we had seen each other, like I said, a lot of places, but I didn't really know what you did. I didn't know your personality, but I always thought that it was absolutely hilarious that you are like this tiny little thing, feisty as hell, bossing a bunch of men around. I died. Isn't that an accurate description?
It is. It's funny because we're very similar, except you deal with women and I deal with men, but like our approach is very similar because we're just like, no bullshit, straight shooters. It's like, it's funny because I'm like, I don't know how Nathalia deals with the women sometimes, but then also if I told you stories, because like when I was telling you stories about some of these guys, a lot of them are very similar because a lot of the stereotypes about women in the fitness and dieting world totally the same with men. They just don't talk about it.
That is crazy. I was actually blown away whenever you start to tell me some of the things. I just think the thing that I find interesting is you guys are going to see this if you're watching videos and things like that. But Ali's brand is all pink, all pink, everything. Up until recently, she had like this bright pink Jeep.
Yeah.
And then it's a brand towards men. And I think it's brilliant. I think it's great.
Thank you. It's one of my favorite colors too, because I know you wear hot pink as well.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I tried to make my brand colors blue and black like forever ago. And I was like, I never wear blue ever. So I was like, I'm just going to make it hot pink and black and just make it work.
It has worked because I think that it does make you stand out, especially being a men's brand that is all pink. I think it's very interesting. So, Ali, one thing that I really want to cover today, actually, before we get there, I know that you've answered this question 500 times, but I think it's important to give some background for everybody. How did you get into working with men? I know that you worked with Wall Street men that wanted to get into golf and things like that. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was really stemming from golf fitness because when I graduated with an exercise science degree, everyone wants to train athletes. And the problem is that it's just a very weird, saturated market. Athletes are mostly broke unless you're at super elite level. So I grew up in Greenwich, Connecticut, which is a very wealthy town that had 9 golf clubs in it. And I always preface that with like, I grew up in Greenwich, but I am not Greenwich. So I didn't grow up with, maids and all that stuff. So working in gyms in Greenwich brought me a lot of guys in finance because we were right outside of New York City. So all the Wall Street guys, they all play golf because business deals are done on the golf course. And I was like, I know nothing about golf. I don't really care about golf. I should probably learn about golf. And then I end up falling in love with it. And I went all into golf fitness and became the golf fitness person. And that brought me all men as a clientele. And I was like, interesting how the conversation would turn from how do I hit the ball farther to I have no energy. I really don't know what to eat on the course. I want to fill out my shirt better. Like a lot of more aesthetic, hormonal, nutritional conversations. And I was like, no one's talking about this with these guys, but they would easily open up to me because as a woman, they feel safer, I feel, because it's hard for a guy to be very vulnerable and open with a guy who's jacked and, like for lack of better terms, meathead. Not that everyone's like that. All my coaches are men. So I think that just provided a more empathetic side to have that conversation. And it turned into learning about testosterone replacement and hormone optimization and all of those things to where everyone's like, no one's doing this, especially as a woman. So just drive or run with it. And I was like, all right, here we go. And shit, that started around 2008.
It's been a minute then, like 15 years or something.
43 now. So, I mean,
you don't look a day past 25, my friend.
I love you.
So because there is a lot of talk, like for example, especially now, thank goodness there is a lot more talk about perimenopause and menopause for women. Is there a similar phenomenon for men, like with obviously the testosterone starts to go down and things like that, but is there a name for it? Is it an actual thing? Like educate us.
Yeah. So funny because everyone knows menopause, right? And everyone knows that name and they know it's associated with hormone replacement and nobody bats an eye. But then if men need to go on testosterone, then it becomes this highly stigmatized, cheating, bad thing. But the term is andropause for men, but it's just not as socially thrown around. No one's like, oh, he's an andropause, because that actually happens a lot earlier to men than menopause tends to happen to women.
When does it start to happen with men?
Honestly, like nowadays, you'd be surprised to see boys who are in their 20s with optimal testosterone levels. Like it is downright scary. It used to be guys over 50, right? All the Viagra and those commercials would be towards guys who are over 50. And this was like, 10, 15 years ago. And now, like, we have clients who have their sons get tested at 19, 20, in their 20s, and their test levels are actually really low. And this is due to a whole number of factors: lifestyle, obesity, toxic chemicals in the environment, and stuff like that. So it really can be at any point in a man's life that he starts experiencing that. However, andropause is more strictly connected to the decline in testosterone due to the testicles not functioning anymore, which does happen in older guys. And there's a way to test for that through blood work. But basically, like, your balls will tap out at some point, and that'll be the reason for low T versus it being because of a stressful event or terrible lifestyle or having too much body fat. Those can also suppress testosterone. But the age-related is what andropause is tied to.
I had never heard of that. And I'm mind blown that men as young as like 20 something are seeing this decline. So for andropause, what kind of age are we looking at? What are the symptoms to look for men?
For men suffering from low T, so usually guys will associate testosterone with muscles and erections. And that's the only thing that they think testosterone does. So yes, you may experience maybe less full erections, less strong erections, less frequent, like in the morning, like for morning wood. But typically the decline in testosterone, guys experience massive brain fog, low energy, no vitality. They kind of feel like this apathetic attitude where they're just like, why am I not motivated? Or why don't I have that drive? And that doesn't mean sex drive necessarily. And yes, sex drive can take a dip, but it's not the only thing. So a lot of our guys who tend to experience this, it's usually poor sleep, poor energy, brain fog, just the mental clarity and cognition, everything kind of starts to go down. And then they chalk it up to age. And they're like, well, I'm just getting older. I can't put on muscle because I'm older. And I'm like, that is not true. And it doesn't mean you have to go on testosterone to put on muscle. But typically the lifestyle usually matches a lot of this, but it's mostly those symptoms that guys are experiencing. And quite often they don't recognize it because they're thinking just sex drive, sex drive, sex drive. So they think, well, I must be depressed, or I must need more stimulants, or I'm just going through something. And then they get prescribed an antidepressant or something to deal with that. Instead, they should actually get their hormones tested to see what's really going on.
Yeah, the symptoms sound very similar to menopause symptoms. Obviously, menopause has a few like bonus ones as well, like the hot flashes and all that jazz. But the mental fog, the muscle decline, feeling lethargic, and things like that's very similar. So I know that there is a difference between optimum and acceptable for testosterone levels. So, what would be the levels that we're looking at from a optimal level and for a like medical guideline acceptable levels?
Yeah. So any man, and this is great for women who are listening, if they go to a primary care or a GP, and if they get their testosterone levels checked and they're told that they're in range, that means absolutely nothing to me. So the range for testosterone in men used to start at 350 and go up to 1100. In the last couple decades, they've lowered that. So it starts around 200 and goes to up around 800, which is abysmal. But it's basically to satisfy the fact that most men are showing up lower and lower, because these ranges are an arbitrary range that are based off all the guys in America, whether they're overweight, they're 70 years old, they're 20 years old, whatever, you're being lumped in as normal. And that's where the normal versus optimal comes in, because you don't want to be normal. You don't want to be average. You want to be optimal. So, like, you can't tell me that a 32-year-old who comes in with a test level of 260 is okay. He's not okay. Like, that is not okay. Most men do well when their levels are above 600. And if they have an optimal free testosterone, which is around 35 plus, but you'll rarely see that in healthy men like in their 30s and 40s. And we've occasionally had guys who are in 600, 700, and they still have symptoms of low testosterone and they have needed to go on testosterone. But if you come in at those levels to any GP, they're going to be like, you're insane. I'm not prescribing testosterone. You don't need it. So it's different for every guy, because some guys, they feel amazing. They don't need to go on it yet. Totally fine. Whereas there's guys that really don't feel so good. So the first step is always getting tested, because a lot of guys just, some of them never gotten blood worked. They refuse, or they just don't feel the need because they feel fine. But you want to get ahead of it. You want to have some sort of baseline to measure against, so that when you do start feeling symptoms, you know where you came from. Because if you see a big drop, it could be a problem.
It's so funny that you're saying this, because that's actually one of the things in my notes here, is that to talk about how to even get men to find these things out, because I know that a lot of my listeners, they're primarily women, but there is data that supports that women are normally the health decision makers in the household. There is actually a US Department of Labor research that women make 80% of the health care decisions in the United States. And I'm quoting here, and because women are the main medical decision makers, primary care teams, no conversations with women can have a significant impact on the health of the entire family. And there is also data that women were 33% more likely to visit a doctor than men. So men are running from the doctors. Like, how can women speak with, like, what should they be looking for in the behavior of their husbands? Because, the brain fog, we are more open to talk about, I'm experiencing brain fog. If I tell my husband about brain fog, he's like, the fuck is that? You know what I'm saying? And I
Yeah.
think that's the case. And my husband is very body aware. He's, a fit guy and things like that. But so, what are the things that a spouse, a woman, should be looking at to start to see some trends on their husband's potential low testosterone?
Yeah, that's a good question. And because it's like, how do you identify brain fog? You may not even know he experiences that. And like you said, he may not know what the fuck it is. So he's not going to know. Typically, I describe it as if you have a high performing man who all of a sudden he feels like I'm pushing my thoughts through jello. I just can't execute. They're not as quick to take decisive action, get things done. They'd rather sit on the couch than play with the kids or do family activities where they used to be very energetic about that. Those are kind of some signs if he is struggling with sleep. And I mean, sex drive can be a part of that too. So if he has less interest in it, or if he loses his erection, or if something's going on there, it's not you, ladies. So it's always worth having an open conversation. But those are typically what guys deal with. Or if he's been going to the gym regularly and then he's just, nah, I don't need to go. I don't really have the energy. I'm too tired. If you hear a lot of that, that's usually part of it.
It sounds a lot of like depression, really. Like
It
it's
really
so,
does. Yeah.
so similar.
It is very similar. And that's why the problem, if you go to an insurance based practitioner for this, they will often prescribe a guy an antidepressant and Cialis or Viagra because that's their band aid approach.
Where should people go to get this tested? Because if they go to their primary care provider, is going to be like, "Sucks to be you, man. Here, some antidepressant." So, like, where do people go for this kind of testing?
So we work with a telehealth clinic that is nationwide, Merrick Health, and they are phenomenal. And you don't have to go to a doctor because I know men hate going to the doctor. Like they will only go if it has to do with their dick or like something is faulty.
It is so true. Oh my God, it is so. And they don't speak. I don't know what the fuck. Like, I have to go with my husband to a doctor's office, and I'm the one who has all the reports, and I'm the one who is talking to the doctor. And my husband's like, "How are you feeling?" "All right."
Yeah,
No, you're not all right. We had a conversation and you were not all right.
I love them. Like my husband is the same way. At least he's knowledgeable about this stuff, so he kind of knows how to talk about it. But they don't give as many words as we do. So we're often in charge of the supplement regime and knowing, all right, what are the questions to ask and stuff like this. So at least they don't have to physically go anywhere. So you cannot make it any easier than making the appointment to go get your blood draw. That is it. And even then, if you work with a good mobile phlebotomist, they can just draw your blood at your house. Like it can be that easy. It is 2025. There's a lot of different options. So we like using Merrick because I know the physicians are competent. I know the process because there's so many TRT clinics online now that it's a little bit overwhelming for people to choose which one. And it can seem like all of them are like the best thing ever. And they're just going to change your life and make you into this rock
Sex
hard
machine.
ecstasy. Yeah. And I'm like, oh my God. Like I live in South Florida where there's like
Oh,
TRT clinics
everywhere.
everywhere behind every gas station and all this stuff. It's so bad.
Don't go to something like that. Do
No.
not go to something like that.
And then
Okay.
people are welcome to DM me if they need like some structure or guidance with that. But I would not go to your GP, primary care, any of that stuff. The problem with going through insurance is number one, insurance requires men to qualify for low T, meaning he must fall under the low end of the range. So he must be under like 300 twice in a row. So 2 blood tests, you have to be literally through the floor. Then if he qualifies, you get a prescription to like a CVS, and that can be a whole shit show on its own. But if you ever ask your GP, like, hey, I want to run testosterone and I want to run all these other important hormones, they may say no. They may say yes and put those tests through. And then you get a bill from your insurance company because the lab decided we're just going to charge you $5,000. No rhyme or reason. It's like you get a bottle at a nightclub and vodka costs $900. Why? We have no fucking idea, but that's what insurance companies do with all these lab tests. And a lot of the times, general practitioners are not educated to manage hormone optimization. They are educated to manage certain things. So it's great to have a primary. They're amazing for things like, yo, I need a Z-Pack, or like I have a cold, but I would not put the proactive future of your health optimization in their hands, because that's not what they're trained for. So often they say no to doing all these tests because they don't see the need for it, because they know legally if something is flagged, they're going to have to do something about it, and they don't know what to do about it.
Yeah, yeah. And I think there is a lot of the liability as well, like having to justify to insurance and things like that. So talk to me, how does body fat, because I mean, we're living in a society that's 73%, I think the last data from the CDC, 73% of the US population was either overweight or obese.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's like mind boggling. So how does body fat impact testosterone levels? What kind of impact does excess body fat have on men?
So the easiest way to explain this, like, body fat is the most inflammatory tissue there is. So basically, if you have too much of that, you are just constantly living in an inflamed state. So an inflamed body is not going to say, hey, let's procreate and let's create these amazing testosterone levels and let's go bang everything. No, no, works. So having higher body fat levels does increase the enzyme that converts testosterone to estrogen, because estrogen is actually a very protective hormone, both in men and women. So it ramps up estrogen because it's trying to protect the body against the inflammation caused by the body fat. So that's why guys can become very estrogenic in a sense when they're not on testosterone, but they're actually making a ton of estrogen in their body fat tissue. So it's protecting itself against itself because it is so inflamed. So walking around with that, you're already going to have suppressed levels of testosterone because as I was mentioning, your body's not going to be like, yay, procreation. It's very similar to if you're stressed. Like, stress can cause inflammation, and nobody who is super stressed out is going to be like, ready to get in bed because they're just like, I can't handle it. So
yes, I just want to take a nap.
Yeah. Like any guy who's, he has a deadline and he's trying to get shit done. And then you're just like, hey, honey, let's go. He like can't switch gears that quick to pop a boner. That's not how it works. Anyway, usually higher body fat is mixed in with poor lifestyle habits, which we know are dietary and movement and probably alcohol. So, alcohol is a big issue across both men and women. And I'm sure you have a good amount of women who maybe have their glass of wine, or I don't really drink except Friday, Saturday, we drink at dinner. And it's spoken about, yeah, we have, a glass of wine, but that glass is the size of a bottle.
I actually did a reel comparing, because people are like, it's just a glass of wine. And then I compared what an actual glass of wine is and what the glass of wine pour of most people is, and it's twice the size. It's crazy.
Yeah. It's like the fitness professionals sizing of peanut butter on a spoon.
Yeah, I've done that too. I've done that measurement too.
It's like really sad when you actually measure it out and you're like, oh, wow.
I have a question for you. And these questions that I'm going to ask next, it's more in the sense of, because I think that before we even start to talk about the solution, I think that for women with their husbands, there needs to be the conversation that the problem actually exists. So I'm going to read some of the questions that members in my program asked, because I told them that I was going to be interviewing you. And I was like, I have so many questions that I want to ask Ali, but let me crowdsource here to the people who are going to be benefiting from the questions. And I think that because you are a woman, but you are also a bro, in the sense that, you know what I'm saying? The guys open up to you and they tell you things. So you might have suggestions on how to spot things, on how to better address the conversations. So the first question here is, and I'm reading verbatim, okay?
Okay.
What are ways you can try to encourage or motivate a spouse that sort of let himself go and the wife has noticed it? I'll be candid. Mine has let himself go and the sexual attraction I had for him is diminishing. I've told him, so he's kind of aware. But how can we wives that are working on ourselves encourage our spouse that maybe have the same motivation or be goal driven as their wives?
So I would say if she isn't already, and I don't know her, so forgive me if I'm already saying something that's in process, but if she gets in shape herself and then radically changes her lifestyle, then he will take notice of all the changes, all the attention she gets. And this doesn't mean like attention from other men, but it's going to be comments galore from people who have just maybe not seen you guys in a while, or all of a sudden like, oh my God, what are you doing? You look amazing. So
Mm-hmm.
when it happens the other way around, we often have guys who come with us, all of a sudden they change their body and they change a lot of things about them. And then the wife asks, can I coach with you guys? Because we know that if you're married to them or related to them, you can't push them or coach them. It just
Yeah.
does not work. So it's tough to motivate him unless he wants it, right? And I understand the frustration with that. However, the best thing that you can do is be the example. And then
Mm-hmm.
if you have children, anytime you relate it to the children, that is a huge pain point. So keeping him alive for the future of the kids, walking your daughter down the aisle, seeing your
Mm-hmm.
son, graduate college, whatever it is, connecting those dots are huge because guys may not realize that until they're brought that's brought to their attention, because we have a lot of guys who have kids and they usually say, I don't want to end up like my father or grandfather who had a health history problem, and then asking them why, and then connecting the dots and being like, do you want your children to lose their father at 40 or 41 or
Mm-hmm.
whatever? Because letting himself go is a direct correlation with his health. So I understand that the physical attraction's not there and that he physically does not look how he should for a healthy man. But you can always bring to his attention that it's going to make his health spiral downwards even more, which a lot of guys can be resistant to, or again, it goes back to not wanting to go to the doctor, but connecting the dots to something that means a lot to them, whether it's they could lose their job or they may not be able to, do kids activities or something like that. You really have to connect it to a pain point. And men respond best not when they're scolded, but when they're told, like, it's okay that you feel this way. You're still valuable. We still see you. We still acknowledge you, but you're better than this. That
Mm-hmm.
tends to get to them a lot more. Like women were more like, if someone yelled at us and said, if you don't do something about this, you're going to end up fat. That's enough motivation for us.
Mm-hmm.
But for men, it's like that doesn't connect the dots. So for men, if you connect the dots with a pain point from something that means a lot to them to push it forward, or telling them that they are better than this, that they're better than this, that they know they're better than that, that will get to them.
What I'm hearing is that like the all ends to the same end result. You're
Yeah.
just using a different kind of like highway to get there, because the one talking directly about the body becomes almost a little bit accusatory rather than helpful. It feels like they're being judged.
Yeah. And guys don't emotionally react to things as they do logically. So they'll understand the logic behind why they need to do what they do if it's presented in a way that's not like trying to bring them down. So it's a
Mhm.
unique psychology, because when I talk to our guys, I have to point out that I know you're better than this and I know you want more for yourself and you want more for your children. Versus if I phrased it in a way like, why can't you do better? I think you know what to do. Why can't you do it? Or, you really should be doing XYZ. That comes across more threatening in a way that they just shut off and they don't want to
Mhm.
hear it.
I can vouch for that because I'm married, and yes. And yes. So true. So
Yeah,
true.
because if you tell a guy, hey, I'm not attracted to you anymore. I mean, some guys, they don't care.
Yeah.
It's because they're so in their, what's the word? Like they don't feel like themselves. So it's like nothing that don't already know. But if you say to somebody you care about, like, I'm disappointed, that's going to hit harder.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm disappointed because I know you're a better man than this and that you want to be better than your father or whatever. And then again, coming back to some of those pain points and stuff, it really does push them. But at the end of the day, they have to want it. And I think if you just need the model and you change your habits and all of a sudden you're getting noticed and compliments and you're feeling great and you're energetic and all of that, then he's going to likely want to be like that too.
So I don't think I would have been able to say that so beautifully, but you're dealing with men all the time. So another question that we got is, and I've heard you speak in some of the podcasts that you did, so I know that you're going to go to town with this question, and I love it. So what role does stress and no sleep play in men's hormonal health? And what labs or checkups should men over 40 be getting regularly? So let's divide the question. So first one is, what does stress and no sleep play in men's hormonal health?
So there are studies actually done on guys who are sleep deprived, meaning 5 hours or less during the week, brings their test levels down. I believe it is 15%, which could be a big chunk, especially if they're in their business building years. They feel, I don't need to sleep. If I'm dealing with different time zones or international time zones, like sleep can wait. I got to work because men want to build the business, provide for the family, and not till they're like 50, 55. They're like, cool, I can get in shape and take care of myself. And that, could be too late sometimes. So they often don't think of themselves. They don't invest in themselves because to them, it's no, I want to put that back toward my family, to my career, to all of that stuff. So they have that weighing on themselves. When they don't sleep, just like any other human, we become more prone to insulin resistance. So they're likely to binge on carbs and sugar. And, not that carbs are bad, but they might eat things that are hyper palatable, similar to like hangover food, because your body's just like, give me energy. So they're prone to that. They're prone to more cardiovascular events. So a lot of men have a cardiovascular history in their family. That's going to make them more susceptible. When they're stressed, it's just let's 10x that. So similar to what I was saying before, where your body is inflamed, when your body's stressed, it's not going to say happy procreation. This is awesome. And the analogy I use in the fitness world, you've probably heard me say, is like if you're going for a PR in a squat and a guy's got 400 pounds on his back and then he's coming out of the hole and he's like shaking and his eyes are bulging. He's like going to his pants. Yeah. Like that. And then you walk in front of him and you're like, hey, honey, let's go right now. And he's, you can't physically, it's impossible to like spring a boner in that moment because your body is under so much stress. And so that's how the impact is on emotional stress, psychological stress, like all of that. So if you have a man who is in the business building years and maybe he's trying to balance the family and wife time and work and then friends and then all these variables, and then it's like screen time, and he's not as sexually active or not as interested, it's because it's just way too many inputs. So it does have a huge impact because your body does not know the difference between a squat PR happening or I need to hit deadlines, I need to work as much as possible, and I need to get all this done because then nobody's going to survive because I'm responsible for the livelihood of my entire household. So that's how it impacts.
I didn't know that it was like a 15% decline on testosterone. That's wild. Like wild.
It's bad. I mean, there is a hack for when men want to qualify for testosterone or if they're being drug tested in certain sports organizations. The joke is to go on an alcoholic binge, do not sleep, and then just go get a blood test done and you'll be really low.
You know what I saw on TikTok, and don't listen to this around your teenage boys especially, but have you seen something on TikTok? I was baffled that some very young kids are taking Plan B pill.
Yes, I saw that.
And then getting prescribed testosterone. And I'm like, these kids are 18, like 17 years old. I'm like, stop it. Why? And okay, so I'm going to take a break from these questions because I have a question for you. What is the difference between anabolic steroids and hormone replacement therapy? because there is this stigma, oh, like it's gear, like all of that. How does someone know like the difference between the two? What is the technical difference between the two?
This is a great question because for men who do need testosterone and maybe don't know a ton about it, but also their wife does not know a ton about it and does not have a favorable opinion on it. We have heard guys are like, well, my wife thinks I'm taking steroids. My wife says I'm cheating. Like my wife doesn't want me on it because a certain number of reasons. The stigma is attached to it because it is a steroid hormone and it comes in a needle. So anything in a needle is already like taboo, right? So the difference though is in the dosage. So therapeutic testosterone dosages are literally just to bring a man to where he should already be biologically producing testosterone, nothing more than that. And so the average amount that a guy would be prescribed would probably, be around 100 milligrams to maybe 200. Sometimes guys need more than 200. It's very rare, but that literally is all that you need to bring you to where you should be or need to be. Now, bodybuilder dosages are like 10 times that. So
Holy shit.
100 milligrams and then a gram, it's a big difference. So you cannot legally get prescribed, or I'm sorry, anabolic steroid dosing levels of testosterone. Like the legal limit, I think, is 400. I've never seen a prescription written for 400. The most I've seen is 350 because some guys actually do need that. But honestly, it's mostly between 100 and 200 milligrams per week. And anybody who is taking 6, 7, 800 milligrams of testosterone is not getting it from the pharmacy. So the difference really is in the dosage, but because it is a steroid hormone, it gets lumped in with steroids. And this argument happens all the time because a lot of my posts get trolled as, well, so-and-so is not natty. And I'm like, okay, what does natty mean? Is TRT natty? There's an argument there all the time because they don't think that testosterone is natural. But I always say, well, if you want to be jacked, good luck just sitting on the couch injecting testosterone.
Which that was actually like, if you saw my eyeballs go down, that was literally my next question. Because you see, like a lot of men, especially in Florida, when I lived in Florida, I don't see much of this here in Texas, but when I lived in Florida, South Florida, you're in the area, you see these guys with bitch tits walking around like this, no offense, but that you clearly know that they're doing something but there is something missing. So can you like just go and inject testosterone and then you're going to get jacked and disregard the lifestyle? Like, how does that work?
So the funny thing is, like, I talked about this on Mark Bell's podcast, right? And I got butchered by so many of these idiots because they're like, well, my friend takes testosterone and he doesn't work out and blah, 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 blah. But there is a study out there where they had guys who injected 600 milligrams and it showed muscle growth. But if you know how to actually read research, it doesn't mean shit because it doesn't mean visually they looked jacked. It just meant it showed like the tissue had some proliferation and grew. Like it literally, there was no like visual difference, but they needed to be right. So they're throwing out the study. And I'm like, that's great. Ask any bodybuilder who takes all the anabolics plus 10 times like the dose of what therapeutic test level is, if he goes to the gym still. So you competed, like you actually still have to go to the gym. You still have to diet. You still have to do all those things. They are trying to get bigger for a living, these guys. And they're taking so much more than TRT doses are going to give. So the thought process of taking it and then turning into some jacked physique model is a little
jacked
delusional.
Model?
Yeah, it's like delusional. That never happens. And I mean, I literally have had guys say to me, like, I don't want to get too big. And I'm like, what? I'm like, dude, you're going on TRT. Your levels are through the toilet. It's not.
I don't want to get, it's kind of like the women who are like, I don't want to look bulky. And I'm like, nobody gets bulky by accident. Nobody shows muscles by accident. No. So like, because you have access to men, I'm curious because For women, I know because I'm dealing with women on a daily basis, the negative effect of social media and the comparison game and things like that. So, do you see a little bit of an alienation of men and unrealistic expectation of how they are going to look because of a lot of men on social media who are saying they're natty? And we all know, and natty for you guys listening, it's like all natural with no anabolic steroids at all, which can be, questioned, but it's no, I've never done anything. How do you find that impacting men? Do you see the same impact in men as, for example, I would see in women?
Yeah, the comparison game definitely happens with guys. And I have always asked when they say, I want to get shredded or I want to be jacked, what does that mean to you? Because if you're talking about The Rock, okay, it's gonna be a lot of things involved.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about like Ryan Reynolds, like that's very easily achievable. But most men, their concept is skewed across the board. So I'm like, send me a picture of a celebrity or somebody on Instagram that you like their physique, you would like to look like that. And then quite often it's a very achievable physique, but it is way far off from where we are. So we have to be realistic. Okay, this is 2 years down the road. This is not in 6 months. This is not in 3 months. And then it's also like the visual comparison of, well, you're 5'9", this guy's 6'4". It's going to look a little different,
So you have the same problem with men as we have with women. How do you manage to set expectations? Because again, it kind of goes back to, because on social media, I love social media. I mean, we've managed to stay in touch because of social media. I've met so many amazing people on social media, but I do find that it is creating this quick reward and setting people for failure by not talking about how long the process actually takes and what is even real. You have these women who are like snatching their waist and it's like they just have a belly button. I'm like, that is not real life. Stop it. So, and I'm sure there is that with men as well. Like Goob calls them out all the time, and I think it's hilarious. So, how do you navigate that? What does the conversation look like?
So, say they present to me a photo where I'm like, okay, that's a really far off from where they are. I ask them, I'm like, what are you willing to sacrifice to look like that? Because say it's a guy who's got like veins on his abs and he's just dick skin lean,
Did you say dick skin?
I said dick skin. Like really, really sure. It's a term my coach used, so I stole it from him. But
oh my god, I should wipe the tears off my eyeballs because I got my lashes done today.
You guys can start using that with your husbands. Do you want to be dick skin lean or do you like labia lean?
I'm dead. I'm deceased. Okay, carry on.
Because you have to ask that question because like typically these guys are just, completely new to working hard and dieting, and we don't get guys who want to compete. That's not like our demographic. So usually they see like their favorite influencer who looks kind of jacked. And so it does not necessarily require going on different steroids. It's more, you need more time in the gym and you need more time eating enough to support it, because another very common similarity with men and women, at least with our demographic, is we get guys who have undereaten for a very long time and then they expect to look muscular, but they actually didn't feed themselves appropriately. So they don't have that muscular looks that they want. So often that comes with a very hard conversation of, are you willing to maybe be a little uncomfortable and not be super shredded for a while until we lean you out and then you have that look? Because if we diet you from where you come in, you will be more skinny fat looking. And this happens to a lot of guys. Like this is the man cycle that happens because they're like, I want more muscle tone, but I want my abs, but I want to be yoked, but I want to be like shredded, and they want it all at the same fucking time. And I'm like, cool, bro, that's cute. We'll get you there, but it's going to take a while. So I don't actually say it like that, but I explained it to them. I'm like, listen, if you're starting at 1,800 calories, which some guys come in eating, where are we going to diet you to? 1,400? And then, yeah, you'll drop body fat, but you may end up feeling small. So then they feel small and then they hate how they look. And they're like, now I feel small and woe is me. And so then we have to explain to them that the reason for that is because they dieted too hard. They didn't spend enough time eating up. So when they eat more, usually men do bulking, because that's the old school thing where they're like, oh, if I bulk, I can eat whatever I want. Then they gain way too much body fat. Then they feel fat, squishy, gross. So then they cut their calories, cut their carbs, overdo the cardio, and they go back to what they look like. And there's no change in their shape. So there is a way to do it strategically without doing that, but it does kind of skew what they feel they look like. Because there are a good amount of guys who like say they're sitting around, 20% body fat, which would be more like 30% in women likely. For them, they don't think they have a ton of fat to lose. When in reality, they actually have a ton of body fat to lose. And they could be shocked by how lean they've gotten and how much body fat they lost. And they're like, I didn't know I had 20 pounds of fat to lose. And I'm like, we did.
Yeah, it's funny because, and that's my perception. I feel like men, like my husband, if he gains like 10 pounds, whatever, I'm a bit bigger. I find that for women, the gaining the weight is almost becomes crippling.
Yeah.
Like legit crippling. I've had women that were like, I'm legit not, I'm canceling the vacation. No, 100%. Like I'm canceling the vacation. I'm canceling the family photo shoot. I'm like, it really does become crippling. So I find with women, I normally like to get them a bit leaner so that we can play around with the calories a little bit more because they're closer to their ultimate goal. So there is not as much time like mind fuck in the process.
Yeah. Yeah. That is huge because it'll fuck with some of our guys. Like we have guys that tell us every day, I was 2 pounds up today. Oh, I don't care, and why I don't coach as much, so much anymore. But we don't care so much about the daily weigh-ins as we do the trends. And then more often than not, when they gain weight, but they look better, the buy-in happens and they realize this is why they have to eat more, because before they felt like shit. They were starving themselves. Men are still hooked on the carnivore low carb world.
So women too. Women too.
True. Yes, this is true. Men, it's like I'm fasting and carnivore, keto, low carb. It's like clockwork how they operate.
And hydrogen water too, because of Gary Brecka. Do you get that too? Yeah. It's funny.
So that's like their thing. Their default is to cut their carbs and then start increasing their cardio, and then they don't really change.
Yeah. It's funny because one of my husband's friend, he's my husband's best friend, sent me a message whenever he gets in a health kick. He's like, I heard of this hydrogen water, and what do you think? And I'm like, garbage, trash. That's where he belongs.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. What labs or checkups should men over 40 be getting? Because I know that it can become a little bit of a minefield. So what should they be looking at?
So the basic stuff is going to be like a CBC and a CMP, which are going to show like red and white blood cells, liver enzymes, kidneys, urine, all that stuff. And then we get into the hormones. You're going to want testosterone, free testosterone, sex hormone binding globulin, which shows how much of your testosterone is bound and your estrogen's bound. Prostate, so PSA, LH and FSH. And the funny thing is, like, some guys didn't know they also have LH and FSH. I was like, yes, it's not just a female hormone. They're like, oh, I have that, because when that shows up really high on labs, typically it's because that means like your balls, they're dead, they're tapped out, they're done.
Holy
no
shit.
more testosterone will be produced from the testicles. Whereas if they're low, that typically means that there's suppression, and that suppression can be stress related or some other type of thing. So those are important to get. And then you don't really need to retest those if somebody goes on testosterone, because if you go on testosterone, they're going to come down to like next to nothing because they get suppressed because you're getting exogenous testosterone. A cardiovascular panel is also going to be important, just to see triglycerides, cholesterol, LDL, all that important stuff, and a full thyroid panel. We've had 3 men with Hashimoto's, which usually is tied to mostly women. Yep. And a lot of suboptimal hypothyroid. with guys. So
is there a correlation between low testosterone and like hypothyroidism?
yeah, and they work in coordination with each other. So, quite often if test is low, thyroid will be suboptimal as well. So, a lot of guys don't realize that. And that could also contribute to some of the cognitive fog that happens. So, it's just important to get that full picture. And it's not just TSH. So, a lot of GPs will do just TSH, like you want free T3, free T4, which is not as important, but in combination with TSH. And that's a good starting point to have. Progesterone in men's useful because that comes from pregnenolone, and pregnenolone is kind of termed the mother hormone. But pregnenolone and DHEA are both neurosteroids, and they're great tests to get because as guys get older, DHEA can decline, pregnenolone can decline, especially in guys who have a history of PTSD or basically are the type that can't get to sleep at night. They've got anxiety and deal with that. Quite often that can be low pregnenolone. So that's why the full picture is important versus saying, yeah, my right foot does not work the same way as my left, or I have better ankle mobility on my left side. Cool. What does the rest of your body do? Like,
Yes.
everything. So,
yeah. No, I love that because it does need to be comprehensive. I find that a lot of times people focus on the trees and forget about the forest. And that's, I think, the problem that I have also whenever it comes with nutrition, that people are like, oh, I'm going to carb cycle. And like they're trying all like the fancy stuff, but they're still eating 5,000 calories a day. You can carb cycle all you want. You're still in a caloric surplus. So it doesn't matter. So you need to take that step back before we get all fancy.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we have guys that want to carb cycle too. And I'm like, you can't even eat your calories consistently. You're not carb cycling. There's no point unless you're like super, super consistent and you're hitting your targets. Then it makes sense to carb cycle. But if you're like all over the place, like there's no point. It's like stupid.
Yeah. People try to overcomplicate things before like mastering the fundamentals. So here's another question from a member. Is there any way to help increase low testosterone without having to get testosterone? Because apparently that kills sperm count. I know you're going to have a field day on this.
Let me prepare for this.
Yep. I know. I can just see like the way you fixed yourself on the chair there.
All right. So is there a way to increase testosterone without going on TRT? This gets asked a lot because there are tons of test boosters and herbal supplements out there that claim to, and technically, like on paper, they can increase levels. However, if you're going from 220 to 320, you're not going to feel anything. And a lot of those test boosters long term are actually quite dangerous. They're not well studied and they're just money going out the window. Like they're very expensive for a collection of herbs that claim to make you feel like this vigorous
God. Greek God.
It doesn't work that way. So the answer is if you dial in your lifestyle and your training and you're eating and you're sleeping and you're doing all those right things, you have a better chance of having more optimal testosterone levels. But if a guy is testing where he's super low and all those variables are in check and he's done all the right things, it's pretty slim to none to get him to optimal levels without bringing in the use of testosterone. So does that suppress sperm count? So it can. However, if it was contraception, that's what we would use as male contraception. But there are very many bodybuilders who are taking massive doses of testosterone who have kids, who didn't plan on kids, but all of a sudden, surprise, they have a kid. So the protocol for a man who maybe wants to have children or is considering having children is to get a sperm test done before even going on testosterone. This way, you have not only a baseline to show what your sperm production was, but when you do go on testosterone, you can continue to test it to see if it has actually had an impact. Because a lot of the guys who say, oh, I have no sperm because of testosterone, actually had very low to zero sperm count before they went on testosterone, but they didn't do a sperm test. So if they go on testosterone, that's something I'm very pro, because if you want to have children, you want to come into fatherhood as an optimal testosterone man. This is going to have impact on the DNA, and just more positive stuff goes into the making of the baby and you showing up as the man to father this child. There are other medications that can be brought in to boost sperm production. And I literally was talking about this with one of my clinicians yesterday, how if you bring in bioidentical FSH, which is follicle stimulating hormone, paired with HCG, which is the female pregnancy hormone, those two together can produce sperm in men. I've not seen it not work in guys. And it's pretty much take that for a few months, get pregnant, and then they can come off of it. So it's not something men have to take with testosterone forever. But far too many times I've seen guys where they choose to not go on testosterone because they do fear that. And they actually don't feel so great. They may have no sex drive, so it'd be tough to make a baby as it is.
Yeah, with a
But
limp dick.
yeah, where do you go from there? If you're looking to conceive like next week, maybe hold off, but it's really not ever been an issue. And there are clinics that will say, well, he can go on enclomiphene or he can go on HCG
Clomid
only or Clomid. Yep. I really don't advocate for that, because those are pretty toxic medications, not HCG, but HCG alone. Not all men do well on that. But enclomiphene can cause floaters and ocular side effects in men. It can cause fatty liver. It just almost artificially changes testosterone levels, because on paper, it'll make the labs look pretty. Tests will go up, the numbers will all look good, but guys don't really feel good. So it does not change the symptoms. So the best thing to do for low testosterone is testosterone. And it's compared to, if you have a diabetic who needs insulin, like someone's type 1, they need insulin. You're not going to tell them to eat a bunch of protein to go this super like mechanical and complicated process to make glucose.
Wouldn't low testosterone also cause the low sperm count?
Yes, it can.
So it kind of becomes a bit of like what comes first, the egg or the chicken? Because, and again, I'm no man expert, but I'm just kind of trying to follow the logic. Because if low testosterone causes low sperm count in somebody's low testosterone, wouldn't having like a mild, very mild dose of testosterone replacement actually help the production of sperms, or no?
It very well can. Yes, absolutely. It's just a lot of people have heard that it just completely cuts off sperm production.
Mm-hmm.
Just not true, because again, otherwise then it would be used for male contraception. So it does not have that effect. There are other anabolic steroids that can have a more potent effect on sperm production than testosterone alone. And the dose does not matter, because again, bodybuilders who have been on testosterone at very high levels have still produced children versus men on therapeutic doses. So it's crucial, because guys don't realize like their general health as well plays a massive role. If they drink alcohol, that's going to suppress sperm production. If they are unhealthy, if they have more body fat, like all these things will affect their sperm count, but they don't realize that and they don't see that. So they really need to clean themselves up, because we were made to evolve and procreate as healthy individuals, not as sick, fat, inflamed. So
sick, fat, inflamed. That's a good summary. Last question. And this is still from members of the Powerhouse Academy. Are there better ways for men to build and maintain muscle without overdoing it on calories and protein?
Are there better ways for men to build muscle?
Yeah, this question is starting from the assumption that more protein is going to be equal more calories. Because you see what I'm saying? Because leading to weight gain and low energy, like with the assumption that, you have more protein, then automatically there is going to be a significant increase to caloric intake.
So with protein intake, I don't know if she's worried about protein farts or like something like that, which are a thing. But protein intake, there are guys that overdo it, right? So they overdo it from, do you actually need 400 grams? Probably not, but you actually can't overdo protein. Like you can overeat protein so much and not gain fat, but you can definitely eat a ton of fat and carbs and gain fat. And I have Dr. Jose Antonio who did the studies on people who train. They did protein overfeeding studies where they fed in excess of maintenance calories. They fed people 800 calories of protein over maintenance. Nobody gained body fat. Some people actually gained lean muscle mass. And part of this was attributed to the fact that protein is so hard to digest that your body burns calories digesting it, that basically the calories cancel them, cancel the calories
it's the
out.
TAF, right?
Yeah.
Thermal effect of food.
The thermic effect was like, these people are also, we're talking 4.4 grams per kilo and 2.2, that's a lot of protein.
Yeah.
They were sweating, like they felt super hot because that thermic effect is a real thing. So I wouldn't worry about protein intake. Now, I think a lot of guys just have a skewed amount of how much they should eat. So if he weighs, say, 200 pounds, he could do, max like 300 grams. Does he need 300 grams? No. But if that helps him with not being super hungry and all that stuff, there's really no harm in eating that much protein. He can definitely get away with 220, 250. And then, I don't know where she's coming from with this, but if it's like the bulking and then the cutting, like many men think they have to dirty bulk, which is like junk calories and stuff. They don't have to. Like they can slowly, what we call recomp. So change their body, look more muscular, and drop body fat almost at the same time. It's just a much slower process. Because we know like muscle growth is like this glacially paced process, whereas fat loss is like.
I love that you're saying this because this is for men and women. It's a level of delusion. And I like to say delusion, not a lack of education, because whenever you try to reason, the person is like, no, it's all muscle. Like somebody was trying to tell me that in 4 months, she gained 18 pounds of muscle. And I'm like, you're like, without the assistance of, steroids or whatever, the cap is around like 20, 25 pounds from the research that you kind of kept yourself at. So you're telling me that you gained 18 pounds in 4 months and it's all muscle? Like the fuck?
Yeah, guys are delusional like that too, because if they come from a low carb state and then all of a sudden they're eating more carbohydrates and then they weigh more, they're like, yeah, I put on all this, muscle mass in a month. And I'm like, no, dude, that's glycogen, it's water. And then you're like more food. Like if I hand you 5 chicken breasts while you stand on a scale, the scale is going to go up.
Yep. If I hand you like a gallon of water as you're standing on the scale, it's going to go up. Yes. Doesn't mean that you got fatter.
Yes, that's a great analogy. And it's the same with TRT. Like testosterone brings water retention with it. So some guys freak out because they're like, I just gained 8 pounds in 2 months. Oh my God, I'm getting fat. And then some other guys are like, yo, I just put on a ton of muscle in 2 months. And I'm like,
no. Do you burst their bubble?
I do sometimes. I like that they're excited, but then it's more often than not, it's them freaking out because they're like, scale didn't move. I went up 4 pounds and they just started TRT. And I'm like, you started TRT? Calm down.
Chill, dude. Chill, bro.
Be okay.
I love it. Ali, thank you so much for being here. Can you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yes. Instagram at the Ali Gilbert, ALI. You can slide in the DMs. I answer them all. That is the main place that you can find me. My other Instagram is at Silverback Summit, which is my men's health event that I do in November every year.
In Florida, right?
I'm doing it in Orlando, yes.
Is it always in Florida or do you kind of change location?
No, I've been changing locations. This is our 4th year doing it. I think we will stay in Florida because it's like logistically easier for me.
Yeah. Can you tell the listeners what the event is?
Oh, yeah. So basically, I created this event because there was no event for men's health that brought TRT doctors, fitness professionals, nutrition, and business together in one room. It was usually everyone separated and alienating each other. So I was like, cool, I'm going to make my own event because this doesn't exist. So it's all my trusted network of physicians, fitness pros, nutrition, business, like any aspect of men's health, we talk about that. And then we have fun because that is not fun, sucks. And I'm known to throw a good party. So I like everyone to have fun, but it's like a really great group of people because everyone's there for the same purpose to move men's health forward. But that's kind of basically the room where fitness and medical people are aligned.
I love that. I'm going to ask one more question because it just came to my mind. And we kind of talked about it whenever you were here. Your husband, how does he feel about you? And not that you would give a shit anyway, but like talking about Bonner and like dealing primarily with men, my husband wouldn't really give a shit. So how does your husband handle that?
He just laughs and rolls his eyes like, he doesn't care because he knows, like when I talk about it, he knows that that's part of my personality. That's me.
Yeah.
That's, who I am. And I always struggled with finding somebody who would support what I do because there was the jealousy and the insecurity and all of that. And he has none of that. And I think that's a big deal in many relationships where people find themselves like their motivation or what they do is living someone else's dream. And they don't want it for themselves. They want it for somebody else. And this could be a multitude of things, whether it's a healthy lifestyle or fat loss or muscle growth or whatever it is. But for my career aspirations, he is very supportive. He is similar to me, but also very opposite in personality. He is a genius. So I don't think like jealousy is on his radar. But comparatively, I'm extremely inappropriate and crass, and he is not. He doesn't care.
My husband will say something, and he's like, dude, shit. What's your language? The kids. And I'm like, don't give a fuck. Like, be fine. They'll listen to that whenever we're not here. Like, he's very sensible, very British, have like very put together, very quiet, calm, like very demure. I'm not demure. Not demure. Not mine.
No, I am like, everything about me is loud, like my hair and the pink or whatever. And he is, the complete opposite about it and just more reserved. And he's a physical therapist. So his like professionalism, not that I'm not professional, but I kind of push the edge.
We welcome that line.
Yeah.
We're like, we're like tap dancing
line. Like, yeah.
I love it. I love it. Well, Ali, thank you so much. I'm going to put all the links for the summit as well as your social media. I'm going to put all of that. Guys, go check Ali out. Her content is amazing. I love when you troll people that try to tell you that you can't bench and shit like that. And you're like, oh, you're so cute. And there she is like freaking like squatting, like benching what they probably can't even, not even squat is delightful. So if you like when I troll people, go check her out. Thank you, Ali.
Thank you, my dear.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. But let me ask you, what was your aha moment in today's episode? I would love to know. You can leave me a comment at the link in the show description. You can also follow me on social media, Instagram. Links are down below as well. And let me know what topics you want to hear more about or who I should have on the show. This is it for today, guys. I'll see you back next week for another episode of the Unfiltered Fit Life podcast.